Texas is usually presented through its biggest symbols: oil fields, major cities, wide highways, and booming growth. But away from that familiar image, there is another Texas that feels much quieter and far more fragile. In these overlooked small towns, time seems to move differently. Storefronts age, opportunities grow thinner, and the signs of past prosperity remain visible even as daily life becomes harder to sustain. Some communities were built on farming, some on oil, and some simply grew because they once sat in the right place at the right time. Now many of them are facing a slower and less glamorous reality. This is the side of Texas that rarely gets celebrated, but it tells an important story about isolation, poverty, and survival. From places like Lueders to nearly forgotten towns like Moran, the landscape is filled with communities carrying histories that are often dramatic, ironic, and deeply human. And among them are towns like Escobares, Presidio, and Robstown, where the struggle is not just about preserving the past, but about making it through the present. In Starr County, near the Rio Grande, sits the small city of Escobares, with a population of around 2,600 people. On the surface, it may look like just another quiet South Texas town, but the economic realities here are hard to ignore. The median household income is only about $29,000 a year, and close to 47% of residents live below the poverty line. Those figures reveal a place where financial hardship is not occasional, but deeply woven into daily life for many families. Escobares is small, relatively isolated, and limited in the kinds of jobs it can offer. Many residents depend on local shops, small family businesses, or whatever work they can find nearby, while younger people often feel they have little choice but to leave for larger cities just to build a future. That contrast is what makes Escobares so striking. Texas is widely known for wealth, oil money, and the oversized confidence of cities like Houston and Dallas, yet here the pace of life is much slower and marked by restriction rather than abundance. In Escobares, the Texas success story feels distant, almost like it belongs to another state entirely. If Escobares represents hardship along the southern border, then Presidio reflects a very similar struggle from the far western edge of Texas. With a population of roughly 3,000 people, Presidio faces even harsher economic conditions. The median household income is only around $16,000, and more than half of its residents live below the poverty line, putting it in nearly the same difficult position as Escobares. The numbers alone tell a serious story, but the physical setting makes the town feel even more vulnerable. Presidio sits in a desert landscape defined by distance and separation. Long, empty roads stretch between it and the nearest major cities, reinforcing just how cut off the town can feel. Job opportunities are limited, and many residents rely on cross-border trade, temporary work, or whatever income they can piece together. The name Presidio, meaning fortress, sounds solid and powerful, yet daily life here often reflects the opposite: fragility, economic strain, and endurance in the face of limited options. Like Escobares, it reveals a version of Texas that is rarely included in the state's larger narrative, a place existing far from the prosperity that dominates the headlines. Robstown tells a slightly different story, but one that leads to a familiar result. With a population of about 10,000, the town is often recognized as the birthplace of Texas Hold'em, giving it a unique and memorable place in state culture. That legacy makes Robstown stand out, but it does little to soften the struggles many residents face today. The median household income is about $39,000, and roughly one-third of the population lives under the poverty line. For a town with a name tied to one of the most iconic card games in America, the present-day reality feels far less glamorous than its reputation. Even though Robstown is located only a short distance from Corpus Christi, the economic growth of its larger neighbor has not fully carried over. Many storefronts are closed, job opportunities remain limited, and younger residents often see leaving as a better option than staying. There is a bitter irony in that. A town associated with strategy, risk, and winning hands now seems stuck trying to survive on what remains. Robstown has not been completely abandoned, and it still holds onto parts of its identity, but the sense of stalled momentum is difficult to miss. Like Escobares and Presidio, it stands as another reminder that not every Texas town shares in the state's image of endless opportunity. Runge once caught a small but meaningful wave of prosperity during the oil boom that touched nearby Kearney County. For a time, that regional surge brought the kind of economic energy that many South Texas towns hoped would last. But when the boom faded, it left behind a much quieter reality. What remains today is a town marked more by scarcity than momentum. Its main street is lined with aging buildings that hint at busier years. Many small businesses have closed, and steady job opportunities are now extremely limited. There is a bitter irony in the name itself. Runge almost sounds like run, and in many ways that is exactly what a large part of its younger generation has done, leaving in search of better jobs, better schools, and a future they no longer believe they can build at home. Today, Runge is home to only about 976 people, and the economic picture is difficult to overlook. The median household income stands at roughly $35,000, while more than 42% of residents live below the poverty line. Those numbers reflect more than just financial struggle. They point to a town trying to hold itself together with fewer resources and fewer people each year. What makes places like Runge especially compelling is that their decline is rarely dramatic. There is no single moment when everything stops. Instead, it happens slowly, through closed storefronts, shrinking school enrollment, and young families choosing not to stay. Lueders is the kind of town that can almost disappear on a map if you're not looking carefully. With only around 262 residents, it is so small and so quiet that the entire population would not fill more than a modest local gathering. At first glance, it may seem peaceful in the simple way many tiny Texas towns do, but beneath that quiet surface is a much harder reality. Nearly 28% of its residents live below the poverty line, and the average home value is only about $30,000, a figure that stands out as remarkably low even by the standards of struggling rural towns in Texas. Those numbers suggest not just affordability, but stagnation, limited demand, and a place where economic life has slowed to a crawl. What makes Lueders especially striking is the contrast between its economic weakness and its relatively young population. The median age is around 32, which means this is not simply a town of retirees or people aging in place. There is still youth here, still potential, still the kind of energy that could support renewal under the right conditions. But that possibility remains trapped by the lack of real opportunity. For many young people growing up in Lueders, there is little reason to imagine a stable future there. And that makes leaving feel less like a choice and more like a necessity. In that sense, Lueders is more than just a shrinking town. It is a place where potential exists, but without jobs, investment, or momentum, that potential has nowhere to go. The name Smiley sounds bright, warm, and almost playful, as if it belongs to a town full of easy charm and cheerful streets. But the reality is much more complicated, and in some ways much sadder. Smiley has a population of only about 492 people, and more than one-third of them live below the poverty line. That contrast gives the town a quiet kind of irony. A place with such a light-hearted name carries an atmosphere shaped less by optimism than by economic strain and uncertainty. It is the sort of town where the name creates one expectation, but the lived reality tells a very different story. The average household income is around $35,000, and homes sell for roughly $69,000. Not because the market is booming, but because growth has been so limited for so long. Smiley does still have younger residents, with a median age of about 31, which means the town is not without life or possibility. Yet many of those working-age adults have to drive nearly 45 minutes each way just to reach reliable employment. That daily commute says a great deal about the local economy. The people are still there, but the jobs largely are not. Smiley is not a town defined by laughter or easy prosperity. It is a small community trying to endure in spite of shrinking opportunity, holding on with determination, even as the conditions around it make survival harder each year. At first hearing the name, you might expect a town driven by non-stop business, crowded storefronts, and the energy of a growing trade center. But commerce tells a more complicated story. With a population of around 9,700, it is known far more as a college town, home to Texas A&M University Commerce, than as a place fueled by broad economic strength. That contrast is what makes it stand out. Even with a major university bringing students, faculty, and activity into the area, the median household income is still only about $43,000, and more than 26% of residents live below the poverty line. For a town with a name that suggests prosperity and movement, those numbers reveal a much more restrained reality. The housing market reflects that same pattern. The average home price is about $124,000, which is affordable by Texas standards, but it also points to a market that moves more slowly than in faster-growing parts of the state. Beyond the campus, much of the town feels subdued. Streets are lined with aging buildings, small shops work hard to stay open, and there is a sense that the university provides much of the town's visible momentum. Commerce is not empty, and it is not without life, but outside its academic identity, it often feels like a place still searching for a stronger and more lasting economic rhythm. Ladonia is a small town in Fannin County with a population of only about 635 people, and today it feels like a place suspended between what it once was and what it still hopes to become. In earlier years, it served as a modest center for agricultural trade, giving the town a practical purpose in the surrounding rural landscape. That history still lingers in its quiet streets and small-town layout, but the pace of life now feels much slower. The median household income sits at around $49,000, and more than 12% of residents live below the poverty line. Figures that point to a town getting by rather than truly growing. The housing market tells a similar story. Average home prices are around $87,000, a number low enough to seem attractive at first glance, but one that also reflects a sluggish real estate environment more than a wave of new opportunity. These days, Ladonia is best known for the Lake Ralph Hall project, a major reservoir under construction just outside town. That project has brought a sense of cautious hope, with some residents and observers believing it could eventually create tourism, development, and a stronger local economy. But for now, that future remains mostly theoretical. In the present, Ladonia is still defined by empty roads, quiet blocks, and small businesses doing what they can to survive, while waiting to see whether change will finally arrive. Honey Grove has one of the most inviting names in Texas, and with its nickname as the sweetest town in Texas, it creates an image of warmth, charm, and easy small-town comfort. But the reality, while not without character, is far less rosy than the name suggests. Home to about 1,800 residents, Honey Grove is a long way from the energy it once knew during the 19th century, when it thrived as a center for cotton and railroad trade. Back then, it had a clearer economic purpose and a stronger place in the region's daily movement of goods and people. Today, that earlier importance has faded, and what remains is a town working to hold on to its identity as the forces that once sustained it have weakened. The median household income is around $47,000, and nearly 11% of residents live below the poverty line. Homes sell for an average of about $130,000, a relatively affordable figure that also reflects the town's slower economy and limited growth. There is some irony in the fact that Honey Grove sits near the same major Lake Ralph Hall project that has raised hopes in nearby Ladonia as well. In theory, that development could bring new energy to the area, but at least for now, daily life in Honey Grove remains calm and subdued. Its main street often feels still. Older storefronts continue trying to hold on, and the town's sweetness seems to come less from prosperity than from its persistence. This small town in Grayson County is home to about 1,800 people, and like many places across North Texas, it carries the memory of a busier past. In the early 20th century, Whitewright was a lively railroad town connected to the movement of goods, people, and opportunity. Those years gave it purpose and momentum, but that era now survives mostly in local memory and in the historic buildings that still line the streets. Today, the median household income is around $54,000, and nearly 16% of residents live below the poverty line. That may not place Whitewright among the most economically distressed towns in Texas, but it does suggest a community where growth is limited and the local economy moves at a measured, often sluggish pace. The housing market reflects that same sense of restraint. The average home price is about $160,000, which remains relatively affordable by Texas standards. But it also points to a property market that has not experienced the same kind of rapid acceleration seen in more dynamic parts of the state. Whitewright's main street still has charm, with its classic older buildings and traces of small-town character. Yet some storefronts sit vacant, adding to the impression of a place caught somewhere between survival and decline. It is not fully abandoned, and it is not without life, but it often feels half awake and half forgotten, as though it is still waiting for a new chapter strong enough to match the one it once had. This small town in Fannin County has only about 800 residents, and despite its confident-sounding name, Trenton feels far quieter and smaller than people might expect. The name itself carries a certain weight, almost as if it belongs to a larger, more energetic place. But in reality, Trenton feels more like a village suspended between the highway and its own history, existing in a space where movement passes nearby without always stopping. The median household income is around $53,000, and nearly 15% of residents live below the poverty line. Numbers that suggest a town managing to get by, but not one experiencing meaningful economic momentum. Homes in Trenton average around $165,000, a figure that appears stable on paper. Yet the broader atmosphere of the town suggests an economy that moves slowly and changes very little from year to year. Its main street is lined with small shops and modest buildings that seem largely untouched by modern development, giving the town a look that feels familiar, quiet, and somewhat frozen in time. More often than not, Trenton functions less as a destination and more as a pass-through point for people traveling toward Sherman or Bonham. That role gives it a kind of visibility, but not necessarily vitality. Trenton remains present, inhabited, and steady, yet it often feels like a place watching the world move around it rather than through it. Leonard, also in Fannin County, has a population of around 2,100, and at first glance appears to offer a more hopeful picture. The town feels peaceful, with a charming main street and a strong sense of local tradition that still gives it identity. One of its most enduring symbols is the Leonard Picnic, a community festival that dates back to the 1880s and reflects just how deep the town's cultural roots run. That kind of continuity is rare, and it gives Leonard a character that feels more grounded than many other small towns facing similar pressures. There is still a visible sense of pride here, and unlike some places that seem to be fading into silence, Leonard continues to hold on to a recognizable community spirit. But that does not mean the town is free from uncertainty. Leonard now faces a question that many small towns on the outer edge of growing metropolitan regions eventually confront. Should it remain a small town defined by history and tradition, or adapt into a support community as suburban expansion moves closer? The median household income of about $54,000 US dollars reflects a modest working-class town, stable in some ways, but not untouched by broader economic change. Leonard is still trying to find its footing in the middle of that transition. It is a town with heritage, personality, and the will to endure, but also one that seems aware that standing still may not be enough. For now, Leonard holds its place carefully, hoping to become something more lasting than just another stop along the road. Located in Collin County, Farmersville was once recognized as a proud agricultural center with roots that run deep into North Texas history. With a population of around 4,500 people, it remains a small town, but one with an identity that has long stood out from the communities around it. For years, it carried the title Onion Capital of North Texas, a nickname earned during the time when red onion farming shaped the local economy and gave the town both purpose and personality. That agricultural legacy helped define Farmersville as more than just another rural stop on the map. It was a place with a specialty, a reputation, and a sense of local pride built directly from the land. But like so many small towns on the edge of major growth, Farmersville now finds itself facing a new reality. The outward push of the Dallas area is slowly beginning to reach farther into Collin County, bringing pressure, change, and uncertainty along with it. The median household income is around $47,000 US dollars, reflecting a working-class community that is still trying to adapt while holding on to its older character. That creates a quiet tension in the town's identity. Farmersville is no longer defined only by its farming past, yet it has not fully become something new either.